Hey, so when was the last time you truly stopped for the night? Or did you run all the way up, grab a shower, jump in bed, or whatever your routine is? I'm John Budd. I'm your host of Level Yourself Up, and I want to talk to you about setting some boundaries around stopping at night. And that helps us restore peace, clarity, and trust. We have to shut down our minds to go to sleep and to rest, and it restores us. It's not just here at Christmas time that we need to learn to rest, it's also during every other day of the year. But I think around Christmas time, it can expose some of our big weaknesses that we run on, we kind of run on empty a lot, and we're not resting. And so we don't have clarity and peace and not trust our decisions. A lot of time, the evening prior to the day can start setting the tone of how we feel the next day. If we eat late, we don't sleep good, anything that upsets our routine can throw us off for the day. We also know that a lot of times, if you want to eat healthy, one of the things I have found is that I need to have my meals prepped. I need to have, the water I'm going to drink in the refrigerator. So when I get up in the morning, I can just grab it and go. So that have my clothes laid out so that we can have our night prioritized. But a lot of times we don't shut down and rest. And I think what I have found this week is it's very important and vital as I've been working in this basement trying to crank it out as I've been sharing. It's vital that I stop and take some rest. Even though these things are important, even though the pressure might be on and the temptation to just keep pushing, it's important to rest. Now, that could be just talking with friends, talking with your spouse. It could be just some Bible devotion times. Maybe it's sitting in silence. Maybe it's enjoying TV and stuff like that. But that night before can set the tone for the next day. So basically our overstimulated nights can create anxious mornings. But we also know that rest improves clarity, our patience, and our focus. And I think that rest is a discipline. It's not a reward. And for years, I used to stay up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I've seen the times I've only run on an hour's worth of sleep. And I think when you're younger, you think you can fight through that. But I have learned over the last year or so that rest is really important to me. I'm going to bed a little earlier. I'm just learning because instead of staying up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I tapered back to midnight, 11 o'clock. And now about 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'm ready to go to get to bed. And it's not so much that I just need sleep. I just need to shut down my mind and rest, get off the internet. There might be some texting with some friends and just having some social time there. If we look at the scripture, Matthew 11, 28 and 30, it says, "Come to me, all who are labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." That's an invitation to rest. And it's almost a command. Rest begins with responding to the invitation. And I think for me, learning to rest means learning from Jesus. Jesus often got up early and went and prayed and got away from people. He had personal time. Now, what he did with that personal time, we could talk about, but I think it's good for us to have personal time. It's good for us to think about what we're happy for, focus on what's going good in our life, and have some, I don't want to just say entertainment, but it's good to have some form of entertainment besides the hard, focused work that we often all do. And so that's why we binge watch TV shows so we can escape. But really using those as more tools than escape is what we need to learn to do. I love watching movies, and I've watched less TV in general, less movies this year than I ever have. Kind of was a big movie buff. But I have found that the more I'm involved in escaping life from this reality and living in this reality and focus on what I can do to improve has helped form something different in my mindset. It's changed the way I look at things. And I think it helps us to be more positive rather than wishful thinking about some fantasy life that we might have. And for my friends that you don't watch TV, we read books and we can get into that type of escapism. And that all that can be fun. You know, I love like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, but it's important to have a routine, and that's what I'm focusing on here is having that routine of resting, that we shut down and we rest, not just our bodies, but our minds. You know, around Christmas time, we start celebrating peace and presence and rest. The holidays can really reveal the true noises and pressure, and it can bring other pressure in as well. But the need really exists all year. And I think that we just have to learn to be intentional how we choose to end our day. Stopping helps us honor our limits and boundaries. And I think boundaries are very important in all facts of life, whether it's when we stop work, because there's always something to do. There's always something to do at work. There's always something to be done at home. And there's always something we could be doing to improve ourselves. But we can't just burn the fire over and over and over. There is a time to be the fighter and push through, like I've been pushing on this basement. But even that, there is a time to rest. When I got sick, that really proved it. You know, that day I stopped and rested when I was sick, and I literally just come home and I slept all evening on the couch. I ate a little supper and I slept all night. And then I went to bed and slept all night. I felt so much better. And I was ignoring how my body was telling me. Some of the things it was telling me I need to rest. You know, had I just shut down a few hours earlier in the night, I probably would not got so burnt out. And I think this applies to our day job. We can get burnt out with dealing with the problems, the concerns, and ultimately, when we start resting, we start entering into God's peace that He will provide and protect us for tomorrow. Because when we start resting, it protects tomorrow's strength. And in Isaiah 40:31 says, "Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength." And I think we have to look at that waiting and resting is an active part of trusting God's plan, that we don't have to run by the strength of our own hand. I think there's much to be said about having great problem solving skills. We should not abandon those. God gave us a brain. He expects us to use it. But there comes a point when we just need to sit back and say, what should I be doing, and think about it? Because a lot of times in those times of rest for me, I will wake up and go, oh, here's what we should do. Things will start clicking that I missed the day before. Because if we're running the race, sometimes we can miss some details along the way. And I think we also need to understand strength. Mental strength is renewed through rest. And we have to incorporate rest through every day, or we will get burnt out. We're going to get stressed out. And then enters in chaos and frustration. And I think some of the things that steal our peace at night is if we are just attached to some sort of screen, like I was alluding to with the phone or the TV. It just keeps your brain alert. Late night task also increases mental clutter. And if we find when we rest and just kind of let things go, sometimes things will come to us about, I don't want to say as reflections, but we'll start seeing the answer to some of our problems through the day. Because I think one of the things that for me, I need to do when I have a problem I can't solve, I have to just pose the question to our minds, and our minds are great at giving answers. Now, the problem is we need to ask the right questions. And I also think this is a weakness of mine that I wrote down here to share. and I'm going to work on this year, is that constant input prevents reflection. If all I'm doing is consuming YouTube videos, podcasts, and movies, and not giving time to sit in silence or just take a walk in nature or whatever that may look like for you, it prevents us from reflecting and growing properly. It helps if we can have time to reflect, we can solve some problems. And I also think for me, I've been noticing that when I'm quiet towards the end of the day, it gives my mind time to settle. And I think that's just reminds me of Psalms 46:10, be still and know that I'm God. See, we really need to trust the Lord. God's really been speaking to me about how much do I trust him? And I think stillness precedes clarity. We have to have stillness to have reflection and clarity. The noise of the TV, the noise of the kids, the noise of people pulling on us can block that awareness. So I think some tips that I've been implementing is just choosing a time to cut everything off. Now, like I said, I've been pushing that back, pushing that envelope, trying to get the basement done. But even at that, I'm trying to stop around 7:30, 8 o'clock on the basement. Now, that limits my time to get things done. And that's why I have to have focused effort while I'm doing it. That's one reason you've seen less of my videos on TikTok, on YouTube, and some of the reason my podcast didn't come out like I wanted to, the previous ones, because I've been choosing to try and get this basement done. And I think we have to have times to turn off our screens intentionally. I thought there is this mentality that the first thing we do is check our emails when we get up. And I'll share this, some of the details, but a person this week, their boss sent them an email asking them to stop into the office the next morning. And the next day they called and said, hey, how come you didn't stop in? And that day the person had other plans and they didn't get up and check their email. They didn't, after they check their email in the evening, they're done. And when they get up, checking email is not their first priority. And any other time this person needed something, they would text them. And so, I think to me that was a valuable lesson, because I think about how often for me, that one of the first things I do is check my email in the morning because I need to catch up on what's happened at work through the night. And I look for emails, that's what's going on. But I think it's important to not jump up and check your emails. It's important to have a shut off time and be done. And I think that when we end the day in prayer and in gratitude, it just paves the way for peace, clarity, and help us to have our purpose. And it helps maintain those boundaries, and we can live in happiness. Because let's face it, we can look around, there's bad happening all around the world, whether it's in our neighborhoods, in the country, and if all we do is watch the news and have all that negative input, it can just give us a negative life. And the other thing is learning to let the unfinished work wait. Like this basement. There's a time to let it wait and get it done. And other things need to take priority. I think one of the things I would like to challenge you with is what is something that, like 2 or 3 things that have to be done every day for you. And I'm really referring to, for me anyway, like health. Like I need to have some, no matter what happens, I'm going to do these stretches or exercise. And that's kind of one of my goals coming up for 2026. I think living in prayer and gratitude, that must happen every day. If you have goals, then you should be working something a little bit to move that every day to meet those goals. There's something, so find those items, and those are your daily routines that are non-negotiables, have to be done. And if they are not adding value, we should question if we should be doing it. And I think we got to remember, if we think, oh, well, rest tomorrow, tomorrow never comes. We have to find time to rest and have boundaries. And when we do that, I think we put our faith that God is still working and he'll give us a solution. Late night striving can be signals of fear or pride, nothing good in our life for sure. And we should think about that type of stuff because we need to be living in peace. Rest signals surrender. And I think when I surrender that that's what I'm going to do, there's a peace that comes that God will see me through and help me get everything done. And if we look at Isaiah 26:3, perfect peace comes from a mind stayed on God. So we have to have peace. We need to keep our eyes on what God's doing. Know that God is sitting on the throne. He's not worried. He's not concerned with anything that's going on. He is not shaken. He loves you perfectly right where you're at. And I think when we live in this, it like brings us peace. It brings me peace. And when we have this trust, this security, it stabilizes our mind from the chaos. And just because we're in the Christmas season, and you know, peace on earth begins with personal peace. And for me this year, I don't feel Christmas. And that concerns me. You know, as I'm recording this, I'm 5 days away from Christmas. I plan to post this probably a Tuesday. So it'll post a couple days before Christmas. But we need to have peace in our life. And quietness prepares our heart. And like I said, it gives us time to reflect. So here's another challenge for you. And, you know, pick a time every night you're going to stop working. What time are you going to shut down your screens? You know, what is something at the end of the day you're going to reflect on or look at? And then I want you to notice how your morning changes. Because I really believe that if we can live in this peace from shutting down and resting every night, the next day will go better. What would change if stopping and resting became a normal part of your life? What might God restore through rest? Because peace begins when striving ends. I read that somewhere, and I like that. Peace begins when striving ends, because we often strive to get more done. We strive to go get this, and we strive to do that. But peace comes when we just do it in peace and not responding in anger, of being upset. And those things can test us. Yeah, I'm tested every day on walking in this as well. So I'd like you to practice that this week and carry these habits beyond just Christmas. And with that said, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, and I hope it is filled with peace, love, and kindness, that you would enjoy your time with your friends and family, that you would just love life. May God richly bless you. And I want to thank you for listening to this. If you appreciate all this, would you just give me a follow and subscribe if you made it this far? Give me a thumbs up and share in the comments what you're going to do this week. Give me some thoughts about what you think about these shows, how they can be improved, what you like or don't like. I'm open to hearing your guys' input. I really want to get to know my audience. I see people watching it, but I really would like some feedback, and I hope you have a blessed holiday. God bless you, and I'll see you next week.